Hi, I'm Ryan Hendrix,
And I'm Kari Zweber Palmer.
and we're going to be talking with you about the social thinking vocabulary. Our next concept is all about problem solving and right at the heart of it. And that is the idea of considering and thinking about the size of the problem. Now, problem solving is really complicated. We have to do it countless times during the day across context, and doesn't matter where we are, who we're with. There's always all of this like tiny problem solving that's having to happen as we make choices and shift and adapt our plans to keep moving forward. When we think about how to take a complicated process and break it down, again, that social thinking vocabulary anchors us. And we can start with thinking about just one piece of the problem solving puzzle, which is figuring out the size of the problem. When we first introduce this idea, it's really to increase awareness that problems come in different sizes and to start to put some perspective and parameters around this. And when we think about whether a problem is small, medium, or large, ultimately, that's going to support kind of having this awareness of what our choices are or how we might proceed or what comes next. So these definitions are flexible, like anything that's part of the social thinking methodology. Think about the situation that you're in, think about your social learner, think about yourself within this. But I think it can be helpful, again, as we have this kind of shared language or shared way to communicate about problems. If we start with a simple definition, so we're going to figure out whether problems are small, medium, or big based on how much help is needed and how much time it might take to make the problem better or solve it. Now, that's an important element is that not all problems have solutions, but we can take steps to make them better in some way, shape, or form. And as we start to talk about and teach this concept, again, we're starting like we do with anything to have an increased awareness around how long it takes to solve a problem, around how many people might be involved. So generally, we might talk about small problems as problems that you might be able to solve on your own or with help from another person. Small problems generally don't take very long to fix. And then we contrast that, right, as we're trying to understand and have perspective of these different sizes. At the other end of this, we can imagine that big problems take a long time to make better or to solve them and involve a lot of people or a lot of resources. And then, like anything that's on a scale, then we kind of fill in between. You'll notice, even as I'm defining this, that it's still really abstract and undefined. Not a lot of time, a really long time. And again, that's where a lot of flexibility comes into this, and to think about, okay, what's the context in which you're using this concept, and think about how it will best make sense in that situation. And a couple things, additional things as we think about this, that again, there are so many pieces that are part of the problem solving process that this is just one of them. Your social learners may need help in defining what the problem is to start with, and then going from there. Think about, for anybody, it's much easier to solve a problem that is not your own. So this is an important point to kind of talk about with any of these concepts, especially this one. I think about, because problem solving is so complicated and we have to do it so many times across our day. It will be easier to think about somebody else's problem, to put it into perspective, to then see what the different options and choices are around it. That will be much easier than being able to apply that same thinking for yourself and in the moment that a problem is happening, especially if it's a problem that has a lot of emotion tied to it, regardless of the size. So I think, just another opportunity to highlight this slow and deep learning process with any of these concepts, especially as we get to one that is as complex as problem solving and size of the problem.